So, Adam, what did you do in Budapest?
Over the past year, I've been working on 2 literary translation projects. The first is a novel by Somebody Dezső called The Paris Novel, and the second is a book by my advisor named Shane Gabor, and the book is called Mordecai Kundat, the Book of Mordecai. And over the past year, I've been working on translations of both of those.
That's the next question. It would be so, Adam.
Yeah.
What will you do when you go back to the States?
When I go back to the States, I'm going to continue with translation. It's something that's become very important to me, not just over the last year, but over the last few years. And it's something that I'll try to continue with. There are a handful of Hungarian translators, and there's a small Hungarian literary community in New York, which is where I'll be. And so I'd like to get as involved with that.
Could you please tell us what you think about Hungarian food?
I think Hungarian food is great.
Okay, and what do you have on your plate that you recognize?
Not much. There's some pork, and there's some beef, and there's some stuffed chicken thing, something like that.
Okay, and do you have a...
Do I know what the name of it is? No.
Do you have a favorite wine, or a wine region?
Vian was very nice, and Tokaj is very nice too. But Tokaj is too sweet. Because I went on a field trip to Tokaj with my colleagues, and they stopped at a winery, and there were 6 different levels of sweetness of the wine, and somehow they then drove to the field site, so I don't know how they did that actually. I don't really remember how they did that.
Okay, you must have had the 4 or 5 grade Tokaj.
Yeah, it was Italia.
And when you go back to Arizona, how are you going to continue your work that you started or finished here?
I'm still working with my colleague in Debrecen, and we're still working on a bunch of projects, and we're going to develop it further. And we're going to write some proposals and continue.
And what's your field exactly?
It's the radiocarbon dating.
Nina, unlike many of your counterparts, you were not at a university, but you were at a unique institution. Could you tell us what that was?
Yeah, so my affiliate host here was the Ludwig Museum of Contemporary Art, and it's here in Budapest as part of the Palace of Arts. And it was a little different in that I worked with a specific department in the museum, and I got to work with all the curators, and my field is art history and contemporary art, so this was much better for me in a way than an educational institution would have been.
All right, and when you go back, how will you continue to work with your new colleagues?
Oh, well, I hope we'll be in contact. So I think the research I've done is in a very rich and open field, and I'm going back to grad school, and I'm going to continue this. So I hope to come back next summer and stay in touch with everyone and hopefully see them in Budapest.
And your webpage will be completely live soon, right?
It's live now, and everyone should go visit it. It's contextandidentity@wordpress.com, and it's done. So as of yesterday.
You came to Hungary with your family.
Yes.
What did they do while you were working hard?
Well, the girls, in fact, went to Óvoda every morning, and here they are. Izzy, how was Óvoda?
Good.
And who are your teachers?
You tell them.
I tell them. Well, they had 2 nice teachers and lots of friends, and so they went every morning. And since we're expecting another baby, my wife also was happy for a break from work and took mornings to enjoy Paige, and then we had our plates full of children after that.
Okay, and you've been in Hungary obviously before.
Yes.
And
what's that?
What kind of differences did you notice between your trips to Hungary and this extended stay?
Well, there is something really nice about coming as a Fulbright scholar. It's not the same thing, I think, as coming as a tourist. It's different. It's more structured. I saw way more than I usually have seen in previous trips, and also there was a way in which I was integrated into a scholarly community as a Fulbrighter that is, you know, normally not the case. I think I have met one professor of American history in Hungary before, and this time I've met, you know, perhaps dozens, at least a dozen.
And what kind of plans do you have for future collaboration?
Well, certainly we'll keep in touch, and we're already reading each other's work as of this summer. I was, in fact, on the drive to Budapest today reading my colleague's essay on a movie I saw, a really good movie called Inkubator, about Hungarian Americans. So I think that at this point that's what we're planning to do, though in the future we'll see. UW Oshkosh, the University of Wisconsin at Oshkosh, has a European Odyssey program where students visit between 3 and 5 cities in Europe. And the director told me that he's been longing to come to Hungary, and now, knowing people in Hungary, my wife and I might be able to help him make that possible. So that could very well come out of this. And since I was in Page, we'll see if Page becomes a good site for students as opposed to Budapest. Well, now that I know Page, I find it very student-friendly. So we'll be seeing how that works. I don't know.
So you have some pretty significant family ties to Hungary. How were you able to connect this to your professional work and your project for Fulbright?
Okay, so my father left Hungary in 1956, and his ties to Hungary have never left him, and so as a child we returned and returned and returned to Hungary multiple times. So I spent many summers in Keszthely, where my grandparents had their house, and I decided when I was 20 to learn Hungarian, so I really pushed myself to be able to speak to my grandparents before they died, and I was able to. And then I became a journalist and a visual artist and all this stuff, and at the same time I've always been extremely interested in my father's story. He had a dramatic life. He was a farmer boy, and he lived through World War II, and then communism came, and because he was a wealthy farmer, he ended up becoming punished under the authoritarian regime of communism, and was tortured as a 17-year-old. And when I was even 17 and 18, I imagined myself being tortured, and it was just amazing that my father lived through this experience. So years and years and years later, here I am coming back to Hungary for the Fulbright, and I am taking my father's entire story and blowing it up and making it connected to all of Hungary and making it relevant to so many people both outside of Hungary and in Hungary, and really making history accessible. And I hope that it's a valuable project beyond my family, beyond my profession, but that it affects school children, and that it affects the way people think about Hungary, and that it tells the story of everyday people instead of the great people who are usually the subjects of films and documentaries, and so that's why I'm here.
Okay, and how will people around the planet be able to read your story and to take part in the work that you've done?
My website is going to be a public document, and it's going to be accessible to everybody in the world, and it's also going to celebrate the archives that are amazing, the photo archives in Budapest, and it's going to be a tool for other historians and other artists and all these people to say, okay, this is one story, let's see what my story is, let's see what your story is, let's see if we can learn how to use photographs to tell so many different stories, because the archives are so rich, and it's so important that they are there.
So Ed, you're a student, I understand. Tell us about how this works.
Well, I am a student. I actually had just graduated in my bachelor's and then applied for the Fulbright. I went back to school late in life, as you might have guessed, but and then after getting the application in, I applied for a master's in international education, so I am really a student at this point. And here on a student grant.
What you're doing a lot of research. Could you tell us about what you saw in Hungarian agriculture so far?
Well, a lot of what I see in Hungarian agriculture is similar to other parts of industrialized areas. The things that we have in the United States, the things that I see in Austria, the same things that I see in Germany are all very well represented here in Hungary. There's a lot more of the traditional methods that are being used. I live out in one of the small villages in the north part of Hungary, and so as I travel back and forth between Budapest and Bacel, I get the pleasure of seeing a lot of very, very small agriculture, and then sometimes we get even further into the hills, and it's a lot of handwork, a lot of very, very small properties, and the thing that fascinates me the most about being out there is actually the amount of produce that seems to be grown by the people, the villagers, the people in the small villages and towns.
Have you seen anything that could be of use back in the States?
Certainly. In the United States right now, we're very concerned about the food system, about food security, food access, and one of the probably the most important thing that I've noticed is that in Hungary, food is still a central point in the culture. Whether you're in the city, whether you're out in the country, it doesn't seem to make too much difference. There is an abundance of relatively fresh produce available. You don't have to go very far, and it's not all packaged and plastic wrapped and or converted into something you pop in the microwave.
So you're saying that the fruit actually has some flavor here?
I haven't had a chance to really sample much of the fruit. Cabbage is fantastic, but I live with a Hungarian family, and so I get the real Hungarian cooking. The wife is from the south part of Hungary, and so small town, and so it's cauliflower, cabbage, turnips, all the interesting winter vegetables.
You are not based in Budapest, but that's why you're enjoying the sights.
Yes.
So feel free to look around and disestablish eye contact. You were based in Debrecen, and you were teaching classes, but you're doing something also very interesting that seems to be very American. Could you tell us about the tech transfer program that you helped?
Yes, I've been working with the tech transfer office at the university in helping them try to figure out how they should commercialize their technologies that they've developed at the university, and it's very interesting. They have a lot of very unique technologies they've developed both in their medical school and in their natural sciences and biological sciences areas. And so I've worked with student teams to take some of those technologies and look at what the market would look like for them and the commercialization of those technologies. And so I've also done some training programs for them as well, which has been really interesting for both the medical staff, the clinicians, as well as the researchers.
You were here in the 90s in Hungary.
I was.
I understand. Yeah. What are some of the big changes you've noticed that have taken place over almost 20 years?
You know, a lot has been the same because I was in Budapest then, and with my wife, and we were here on a USAID program helping small companies here privatize. That was in 1994-95, and we lived up on the Buda side. We actually just went up there today to see the place we lived in, which was amazing. We were able to find it. It was still there, but there's a lot of construction. There's a lot of things that have happened here as far as reconstruction, and it's a very beautiful city.
I understand that you have both professional as well as personal ties to Hungary, and what have you been able to do over the past few months?
It's been really an incredible almost 5 months. I came, I guess, to explore roots of my ancestors, my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-aunt. And I think we find ourselves here, not just our past and our ancestors. It's been a very enlightening and enriching experience to teach, to live here, to have new friends, new colleagues. And yet everything is in a sense familiar. They've asked me many times, is there something strange, something different from the United States? Yes, of course it's different. But because I grew up in a home with a Hungarian family, there's nothing strange. It's just wonderful to experience it myself. And teaching, having the foreign students as well as Hungarian students, living in Szeged, having wonderful, wonderful colleagues. It's truly life-changing. That's what my Fulbright scholar friends said. This is a life-changing experience, and indeed it is. And now that I'll be coming back and continuing to teach at the university in a visiting professor capacity, it will continue. And I'm very grateful to Fulbright and to my colleagues and to all of you. It's been excellent.
Thank you. And I realize you also had some ideas for changes, things that you might want to see done differently.
Well, on two levels. I've been teaching narrative medicine, which is very new, humanistic medicine in a clinical environment. And we've been talking about establishing something like my course, institutionalizing it in Szeged, working with the psychology department and the medical school and the dental school. And so that's a small change, but it could happen. And also with you, meeting with the State Secretary Sochka, with Dean Katalin Nagy, talking about screening, oral screening at the national level, which was clearly not on the agenda. And after our meeting, I think it will be on the agenda. And that's, I think, a big change that could happen, and maybe we had something to do with that.
Thank you. You're an artist, you're working in Pécs.
Yes.
And I understand you like towers and other objects that are tall.
Yes.
Please tell us about this.
Yes, so when I was working in Pécs, you know, often I would just travel between my studio and my apartment, working a lot, and going between these two places. One thing, traveling back to my apartment, I would often see would be TV Tower, which is, for most people in Pécs, a point of pride, but it is also very much a point of direction or a way to navigate the space if you're not familiar with it. And for me, it also became a very important personal marker to appreciate that I was in Hungary and you know, not take for granted my time here. So.
And you've been very active in reaching out to your fellow artists across the country.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the exhibits you've attended, or perhaps even those installations you've done yourself?
Yes, well, there was a lot of different opportunities. So I worked with the university and also did a lot of portfolio development seminars to work with the different Hungarian undergraduate students. But then besides that, worked with Fulbright scholars all around Europe to organize an international exhibition in Berlin, which was the first contemporary visual art Fulbright grantee exhibition to take place. So that was a very exciting way to bring everyone together and kind of showcase the artist's research in kind of their language in an exhibition format.
And what was the most favorite piece of art you've developed, created here in Hungary?
Yeah, so my most favorite project that I developed was a piece called Untitled Pillow, because I don't have a title for it yet. But it was combining the history of the Tista Soba, the pillow as a dowry, and that idea of representing wealth and symbols of wealth with contemporary ideas of wealth and contemporary car culture. So I made a plaster pillow painted as a car with auto body techniques, and then underlit it with neon lights. So it's kind of combining history and today.
And you'll send us a picture, right?
Yes, most definitely.
From Chicago? Glad to hear that. But you are unique because you're the only English teaching assistant we have this year. What is an English teaching assistant?
So the one here I think is different than a lot of the other English teaching assistants, which is what attracted me to come here in the first place. I'm lucky enough that I get to work at the Fulbright Education USA Advising Center, working with Hungarians who are interested in going to the US, to study, either undergraduate or graduate, and it's been really rewarding getting to work with Hungarians who are applying for Fulbright in the US, especially having been through the process myself, getting to help them through that. And then in addition, I get to teach as well at a local university here in Budapest. Got to design my own courses and teach them as well, which was definitely a learning experience for me and really, really rewarding. I was extremely impressed by the capabilities of the students and just how much they challenged me and kind of kept me on my toes the whole year.
I understand you're going to stay on for another year.
Yes.
And you've traveled quite a bit with your husband. What have you seen outside of Budapest, which was kind of a favorite place for you?
I really, really liked Eger. The castle there was really pretty incredible, and the history that comes with the castle is pretty awesome. I went to Busojáros in Mohács, which was phenomenal. I would say that was probably one of my favorite things that I went and did outside of my responsibilities as a Fulbrighter. It was one of a kind. I'm definitely going back next year. So I would say those are probably my two favorite things that I've done and seen in Hungary outside of Budapest.
So Zach, you're a high school teacher.
I am a high school teacher.
And tell me, are students the same around the world, or are they different?
Students are uniquely different in the exact same way. I would say that. My students were very much high school students, but behaved very much differently than my American students. The level of quietness was disconcerting. Most of my students were so quiet, I couldn't believe it. I didn't know if they were awake sometimes. In America, Americans are very loud anyway, but my Hungarian students were diligent, I think, to a point of not understanding what I needed all the time from them, especially when we tried to do projects. It was very different. But as high school students, they were exactly like my students in America. They were kids and loved to do kid things. So,
if you were to come to Hungary again, what advice would you give anybody, a high school teacher, a professor, graduate student?
The grocery stores in the mall. That's my first word of advice. Just go to the mall and you go to the grocery store, because that was we couldn't like 2 weeks. We couldn't find the grocery store for 2 weeks. It was crazy. Be prepared for linear thinking. I think that would be as a teacher especially. Hungarians are linear thinkers. American teachers especially tend to be global thinkers, and we try to apply that in our classroom, but most of the classrooms here and most of the people I've met are very linear. So.
Okay, and you had a unique way of encouraging Hungarian students to speak English. You took them to the mall and you did something quite strange. What was that?
We did. We would take our daily hikes and walks, and mostly we would stop and get ice cream. That was an amazing thing to do, and they were flabbergasted, I guess, that we would actually walk to the mall and get ice cream for class. That was, what are we doing? I think they felt guilty. After the third or fourth time they didn't feel so guilty, they would ask, are we going to go get ice cream today? Yeah, we're going to go get ice cream. But we would talk, we would converse. So we would also listen for people as we were walking to see if they would speak English. And then we would stop and have conversations with any English speakers.
Tell us about your obsession with porcelain and why Hungary?
Why Hungary? Well, I fell in love with Zsolnay and with Eozyn, and by chance I found a book on Zsolnay in a secondhand bookstore in New York City, and from that moment on I was hooked and determined to somehow find a way to come to Hungary and work in the Zsolnay factory, and it's been something that I've been working on for 4 years, and I feel like so incredibly fortunate that at this time I've been able to work in the factory for several months in Pécs. And I'm also very excited because my Hungarian has gotten good enough so that I can actually speak to the workers at the factory and communicate with them. So I feel my Fulbright experience is not just about making my sculpture and using the Eozyn glaze, which I'm really, really thrilled about and experimenting with it, but it's also about being in the factory every day, really enjoying that factory life, getting to know the people there, and being in the Zsolnay Negyed, which is a gorgeous environment. And the wonderful thing is that the university is right on the grounds of the Negyed. I've loved teaching my class at the EGTEM, teaching a DLA seminar, and basically sort of a history of feminist art, but combined with all kinds of issues. And that's been really wonderful. And I've given a talk for the DLA Interdisciplinary Conference, which was great. I spoke to some high school students about art, and they were really appreciative. It was an art high school.
And when you go back to New York, what will be the first story you'll tell everybody?
Oh boy, that's hard. You're gonna might have to cut off the camera for a second because I have to think about it. First story, I don't know, I've just met so many wonderful friends. I don't think it's not like a funny story, but that every single day has been rich in my life. Every single day. And you know, I wish I could just stay up 24 hours a day.
In terms of teaching, I really would have liked to have known more about teaching English as a foreign language. English is my native language, but I don't know anything about it. Maybe just not enough about it.
So Ryan, you're a musician and a singer, is that true?
Yes.
I believe it.
He asked me to do that.
What were you able to learn in Kecskemét about music that you didn't know before?
A tremendous amount of things. The first is that I really learned about what the Kodai concept is and how Hungarian music education takes place, which is a very special, very effective sort of music education. And I'm going to be able to take that back to the United States and use it to help teach my music students so that they can interact with music on a better level, that they'll be able to be more music literate because of some of the wonderful techniques that are used here and the wonderful way that that's taught. And I will teach music in a different way. But beyond that, I really learned from being at the Kodai Institute, which is an institution which this year had 40 different countries represented there. So not only did I get Hungarian influence, but also I got to experience the cultures, the music backgrounds of the teachers from all of these other countries, which really helped to round out my understanding of how music plays a role across the world, and music teachers work across the world. Very interesting.
And I understand you've done some volunteer work. Could you say a few things about that?
A little bit. I was able to go to Bayonne, and I got to work with the Chanyi Foundation there. They have a house there for students, I think starting at quite a young age and going up through early college years. And I was able to interact with the students and talk to them about the United States, about the development of music there, which has also affected the development of popular music in Hungary. And we had a really good conversation, just answering their questions for me. It was very interesting. It really got to show me a different side of Hungary than I'd been seeing in my Kecskemét class.
Because you also have a dog.
That is true. He really made the Fulbright experience.
Yes, and the dog traveled in something unique also.
A carrying case, all the way from the U.S.
Okay, and did the dog also study Hungarian folk music?
He listened to a lot of it very patiently and kindly as I got a better grasp of the singing techniques. But singing himself, he's a pretty quiet creature, so he internalizes the music, I think.
I see. And how many folk songs did you learn, or how many different types did you study?
Well, I studied folk songs from all of the major regions of Hungary, and then also within that from different villages within each of those regions. And I would say I probably learned over 100 folk songs while I was here, but it's hard to say because I learned a lot with the group and a lot by myself, and we constantly changed up our repertoire with the group singing that I did, so hard to keep tabs on everything.
And you also went to some dance houses?
Yes, I went to some student dance houses in Szeged, which were run by the woman and man who led my singing group, and I had the pleasure of attending a few folk dance houses here in Budapest, and was also able to go to the large folk music festival with my singing group and perform in Budapest at the Sport Arena. That was really wonderful.
Do you have a favorite melody that you hum to yourself in the shower?
That I have a few that I really like.